Good morning, everyone. My name is Deirdre Denman, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator at EandM. Thank you for attending our webinar this morning titled Barcode Basics, Setting Up Your Scanner Simplified. After the webinar, we will be doing a short Q&A. Please type any questions or comments into the Q&A box, the chat box, or you can email us at webinar@eandm.com. I would like to introduce Eric Keller. Eric is a SICK product specialist at EandM and will be your presenter for this morning. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, everybody. As Deirdre said, my name is Eric Keller. I'm EandM's SICK product specialist covering the Pacific Northwest. And today, we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to go through how quick and easy it is to set up a barcode scanner from SICK. So before we dive into this, ask yourself a couple of basic questions here. Have you avoided vision barcode scanners in the past simply because they're too complicated or they're too time intensive to set up? Have any of your processing auto ID equipment missed barcodes due to high speed conveyors, or the alignment of the barcode wasn't perfect as it came across the scanner? Do you have problems reading damaged codes or codes placed on things like rubber or glass or ceramics? If you said yes, happy you joined us, because we're going to cover all of that today and how simple it is to read barcodes in those tricky applications. So before we jump into the demo real quick of how to set up a scanner and how quick and easy it is, let's just ask a few questions, and we're going to introduce the SICK Lector to you guys. So first is, why vision-based barcode scanners over traditional laser-based barcode scanners? The reasons are pretty straightforward. The big glaring reason is that laser-based barcode scanners traditionally cannot scan 2D barcodes. Today, 2D barcodes are being used more and more in the fact that they handle a lot more information in a relatively similar size package. The other reason is that maybe you want to check multiple barcodes on your box, as you can see in that picture there. You want to verify that everything is put in a box correctly. Having a vision-based barcode scanner allows you to do this. And one of the biggest reasons is that you no longer have to make sure your barcodes are coming across your conveyor or your scanner face in the same orientation every single time. We can read barcodes with a camera-based solution in any orientation. As long as we can see the entire barcode, we can read it with a camera-based scanner. With that being said, why should you choose a SICK Lector barcode scanner? Well, the reasons, as you can see on the screen here, is that SICK has put a lot of time and effort into a very advanced decoding algorithm, which allows for dirty barcodes or partially damaged barcodes, and they've become a very robust vision-based barcode scanner. The other reason is that it's a modular design, and we'll get into that a little bit later before we dive into the demo, so you can see just how modular these devices are. And the last thing being, they're quick and easy to set up. During the demo, you'll see that it's a very intuitive flow, and we can get a barcode scanner set up very quickly. So what is a Lector, if you're not familiar with it? The Lector is a vision-based barcode scanner from SICK. It has a few different product variants. It's teachable. It's a standalone unit, so once you get it configured and the configuration set to the scanner lives on its own. It doesn't need an external controller or any form of interfacing to operate. It has onboard or external illumination, as you can see from the pictures on the right there. We have multiple different LEDs that illuminate the target to allow us to get a good image, or we can use external lighting, which can be triggered in many different fashions, even using the scanner itself. We can scan every single type of barcode on the market right now, from 1D barcodes to 2D barcodes. We can check for OCR and OCB, so we can look at actual characters on labels. And we can also do direct part marking, or DPM. As you can see, the middle 2D barcode on the screen is a DPM 2D barcode. These are barcodes that are dimpled into metal or plastic, and it's a physical marking instead of being a label-based marking. The vision-based barcode scanner from SICK can actually read these and read the data buried in these codes. So the Lector has many different interfaces. It's an Ethernet-based unit. It can speak Ethernet IP or Ethernet TCP/IP. It can read serial, Profinet. We can even do CAN bus control with this guy. And it also has some discrete inputs and outputs that can be used to trigger the external lighting if it's being used, or an external input can trigger the actual device to take a scan. So the Lector is broken up into a couple of product categories here, or product families. We have the Lector 620 series. It's a very small barcode scanner that is meant for high speeds. It can do OCR, it can do DPM. As you can see, it's kind of a lower megapixel, so this is kind of the lower end of the Lector product family tier. In the middle there, we have the Lector 630, which is kind of the workhorse Lector for us. It is modular with C-mount and S-mount cameras, up to 2 megapixel design. It can do all your different 1D and 2D codes, and it has exchangeable illumination. And then at the top end, we have the Lector 650. The Lector 650 is kind of the top tier in the product family, and the fact that it's up to a 4.2 megapixel camera. It can have multiple accessories like the panorama hood that allows you to see a larger field of view around a corner. And the big thing here is it has what's called dynamic focus, which allows you to actually change the focus position inside the sensor of the lens without using a manual like a screwdriver. So as I said before, the Lector is a modular system in the fact that the lenses can be changed out, the lighting can be changed out, the lens hoods can be changed if they get too scratched or dirty. And they have a base reader body that accepts all these different components. And with SICK, the nice thing is that you only have to order one part number to get a complete device. And if down the road you move applications or the lighting you chose doesn't work based on your initial proof of concept, you can change that out by ordering just the individual spares instead of having to order the complete units themselves. I just wanted to go over a couple of the applications. You might see some of these different Lectors from the product family used. The Lector 620 is great at looking at PCB-based component tracking, since it has both blue and red internal LEDs, which can be used to identify or illuminate, illuminate barcodes printed onto green circuit boards. The red and blue LEDs that are internal help with that. The Lector 630 is great for, like I said, it's a standard workhorse, so we're looking at reading multiple codes per label. We can do OCR and OCB on labels of barcodes, whether they come across, as a single barcode or multiple. And then the Lector 650, as I said, it has dynamic focus, so it can be used for barcodes that are on different sized objects. So if you take an external distance sensor, for example, you can teach the Lector to focus on something that's slightly farther away or slightly closer to it based on its size. Also, the Lector 650 is one of the only barcode scanners that I know of that can track printed barcodes on tires. Since tires, black rubber is very, very matte and it absorbs a lot of light, it's hard to actually track barcodes that are put onto these pieces of rubber, and the Lector 650 has a specific algorithm that helps with that. So now we'll jump into the demo, and I'll go through the time remaining that we have and show you just how easy it is to set up a Lector. So what I have here, let me just change screens. Deirdre, can you see my SOPA screen okay? Just making sure.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. So as you can see here, this is the SOPA software from SICK. SOPA is the everyday use configuration software. It's a free download from SICK. It can configure pretty much every piece of equipment that SICK makes except for their safety components. And what you see here is just a general barcode. I'm connected to a Lector 632 on my desk here. I'm looking down at a barcode, a UPS label to be specific. And so what we have here is a couple of different things. You can see the image here in the center. In the bottom, you can see what is possibly being read when the unit is in operational mode. It will talk to that specifically. You'll watch that change as we configure this thing. We have a code reading wizard on the left. So once we get our image set, we can use this code wizard to identify the codes that are within the field of view. This is great if you don't know the specifics of your codes. And then on the right, like I said, Sophos is set up to be a very intuitive configuration platform. So you see that I have all these tabs labeled from 1 to 8, and it provides a very easy to run through workflow. So the first thing in actually setting up one of these lectors is we need to deal with the camera and its illumination. So to do that, we put the lector in what's called live mode, which is what's used for doing your editing or checking all of your current existing parameters. So you can see as I move this label around, we are taking images, and right now we're not detecting anything because the unit's not set up. So the first thing we need to do is actually manually adjust the focus. So you can see right now the image is a little blurry. So what I'm going to do is just turn the focus knob here on the lector itself with the screwdriver. And I'm going to do this until I get a nice crisp, clean image here. Right about there looks good. And so now that we have a nice clear image, we can actually go in and set the actual illumination. So there's a couple of ways to do this. We can manually adjust things like the shutter time and the brightness and the contrasting, or there is a auto wizard built into the Sophos platform that will change these for you. So if we click on auto, in here you'll read during the initial setup that what it wants you to do is to highlight about 20% of a barcode. So I'm going to come in here, draw a box around one of my barcodes. I'm going to pick the 2D barcode because it is the most critical based on its illumination in contrast to be read. So I'll highlight about 80% of the code, and then I'll hit next. What's going to happen now is the lector is actually going to go in, change a bunch of its settings, and as you can see, it found what it thinks is the best optical settings based on the current lighting conditions. And what it has done is just went in and set the image settings. So you'll see that it has changed my brightness a little bit. The shutter time, it changed slightly as well. So now this is what the lector thinks is the best image settings for the current application. From there, we can come in and kind of fine tune a little bit if we need. We can set the reading distance. The reading distances helps decode some barcodes based on their size. And I just happen to know this is about 18 inches away, so that's about 450 millimeters. What it does is based on that distance, it will change the brightness and the contrast values a little bit as necessary. We can also tell the unit what lensing it's using. Right now I have it set 25 millimeter f8 aperture S-mount lens, so we'll choose that. And then from there we can add some digital noise reduction. I always leave this on just because it kind of helps decode the barcodes, makes the image a little bit clearer. And then if we were to use an external illumination, this is where we would also set it. So you can see if I click on the illumination dropdown, I can set it to internal or external. So if I want to turn the internal illumination off, we can do that. And as you can see, with no light being put on target, it's not receiving much of anything back. So we'll leave the internal illumination on. There's some other things here to look at. We have a couple of things. There's an alignment laser built into the lector. What it does is gives you two small red alignment spots, so you can adjust your codes to the center of the screen. And then there's also a green feedback LED, which is really unique to the lector in the fact that it's one of the only barcode scanners I know that can do this, is that every time you get a good scan, the lector will let you visually know. So when it scans and reads a barcode, it will flash a little bit of green light on target and it'll let you know from a distance, like, hey, I had a good scan. And the other thing is we can come in here and we can actually change the way that the unit does some of its image capturing. So we can set it on continuous or to take single images. It's good to leave this on continuous because what it will do is the lector will actually take, multiple images and decode them and then kind of do some averaging and some thinking on those images to give you a much stronger result. And so once we have the illumination figured out, mainly using this autofocus because we're trying to focus on quickness, we need to come in and tell the lector what barcodes that we're looking at. So since this is a UPS label, you can see that we have a few different barcodes. In this case, I want to try and get all three of these barcodes to be read at the same time. So there's a couple ways to do this. We can actually come in and tell the lector exactly what barcode symbologies we're looking at. Maybe they're code 128s or they're code 39s, which are some generic barcode types, or maybe UPCs if we're reading packaged goods going to a grocery store. We can come in here and set these manually, or we can actually do another auto feature. So there's two ways to get into this. We can either click the auto code configuration button here, or we can use the code reading wizard here on the left. So the first thing I want to do is make sure we have any potential code symbologies that we might see, and then we'll walk through the wizard. So the first thing you do is we click start, and this starts the wizard. What we'll do is we'll come in and highlight some of our barcodes here, areas that we want to look at. And once we have that, we'll click save, and then we'll go into the fine tuning. So here's where the wizard portion of this starts. As you read through here, it asks you to position a code one at a time in the field and select this yellow box around approximately 80% of your code that you're looking at. So we'll do the 2D barcode again. Once we have that, we'll click next. And we'll click next again. And here, it's going to adjust the image settings again. And then it's going to go through and look at the image and actually identify any of the particular barcodes it may see. And so what we see here is we have three boxes. The first box being a code 39, the second box also being a code 39, and the third box being a maxi code 2D barcode. We can click this small little drop-down arrow here, and we can see the different codes that are found and some of the different unique pieces of data attached to those codes. So now that we have our three codes selected, I'll click Finish. And this sets the device to run in, it will tell me based on what codes I'm seeing. So we could, in theory, stop here if we wanted to. We could consider this completely set up. But as you notice, since I said before, I'm not getting any of those 2D barcodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to my codes tab here on the right. And I noticed that it, for whatever reason, dropped my maxi code. So I'll go ahead and click the maxi code. So now it's actually going to look for them. But as you notice, I'm still not picking any up. So we need to fine tune its algorithm a little bit. So we'll come down here to 2D performance. We see that the code contrast is set to 70%. 70% means that I'm getting a very stark black and white contrast. As you can see on this label, it's a little beat up because it was sent through UPS from Sick in Minnesota to my house here in Washington, and the code doesn't look perfect. So what I might want to do is I'm actually going to drop this contrast to a low value, so so the lector's not looking for such a stark black-white shift. I'm going to allow maybe some grays or maybe some light gray and dark gray to allow for some low contrast. I'm going, and you can see that now, okay, hey, I picked that code up once or twice here as I'm moving along. Next thing I'm going to do is change my code background to just white because I know it's on a white label. What this is going to do is it's going to free up a little bit of that algorithm and memory in the lector to only look for where codes shift from black to white. As you can see, it's already starting to pick up my 2D code a little more frequently. So the next thing I want to do is drop this cell size to small. So what this is looking for right now is large pixels inside the code itself. So I'm going to change this to small to account for better changes. So this should increase our contrast a little bit here. So now I'm picking up that 2D code a little bit better. The code appearance, I'm going to set this to normal instead of it potentially being mirrored upon itself. Again, it allows the lector to run a little faster. And so I notice that I'm not getting, my my code to be picked up as much as I want it to. So I'm actually going to come back to the camera and illumination tab, and I'm going to manually adjust this just a little bit so we can get that code to get picked up almost every single time. I think my focus might be out just a little bit. Try bumping up the brightness here just a little bit. Sometimes with these 2D vision applications, trying to get that 2D barcode perfect every single time can be a little bit of a challenge, but this illumination wizard that we'll go through one more time tends to do a pretty good job here. I think it dropped my, there we go. And so the thing you'll see here is that in the middle of the screen, you'll see the different codes that it's picking up, and you'll see the content. And so the reason I'm using a UPS label is because it makes it really easy to show that we're picking up the proper code. So if you'll notice this code number 1, it matches the same tracking information that's on the label itself. And some of the analytics built into SOPAS here, if we look, is we can tell how much contrast there is from, this is a 0 to 100 scale. So we can see if we have good contrast on these codes or not. And then we have what's called overall symbol grade. And this is basically the algorithm saying how good of a barcode do I have. And so I use this, and I try, what I want to do is to get these to go to be very good or excellent in terms of a grade. That way I have a high chance of getting these all the time. So if I move the code around, you'll see that my grading changes on some of these. So once I have my settings dialed in where I want them, what I need to do is go in and actually tell the device how to work on its own. So from there, we'll go to trigger and digital inputs. So right now I have it set in presentation mode. What this does is it cycles the unit every about half a second to take an image. The reason I have that is so you can see the changes happening in real time. But you can set this to take a various from sensor inputs to a CAN bus input to be auto cycling based on time, or it can just be in free running mode where it's always just taking an image at every single amount of time. We can also tell it how long to pause after it reads something. There's a lot of varying inputs here. We can configure our digital inputs for both our sensors and just our discrete inputs. We can tell it how we want the logic to happen, whether we want it active high or active low. And then we can go in here and set up our interface and our digital outputs. So this is where, when we scan a good barcode, what's going to happen. So this is where we can come in and set up our Ethernet settings. So we can give it the IP address so we may want it to have its subnet mask. We can change our Ethernet IP if we're using that. Settings, we can change our Profinet or DeviceNet settings, and we can also change our digital outputs, what we want them to do based on different conditions. And so the last thing I want to show you to get this thing bare minimum set up is what to do with images. So we do have some image settings here on the device. So we can save some images. We can tell it how we want to do it, whether we want just the first image or the last good image. We have some conditions on why it might save an image, whether we get a good read or we don't get a read at all. or maybe we just want the PLC to take a random snapshot every hour or every half an hour. We can tell that here by control by master. This will tell the device to save an image and send it on storage. We can tell it where to save images. The other nice thing about the Lector is that we can save on a micro SD card local to the unit, which can be removed. This also can store configurations. Or we can save it on an FTP server, so we can save it on the network. So with that, I'm gonna hop back over to my presentation here real quick. So in summary, as you saw, it was pretty quick and easy, a very intuitive flow in Sopus to set this up. The Lector is a huge product family from SICK. It's a very good image-based barcode scanner. It has a modular design, so we can replace parts as we need. And it's a one part number to order the complete kit instead of having to order the lens separately, the main body separately, the LED separately. One part number orders you a complete standalone unit. And as you can see, in about 10 minutes, I was able to get up and running to read barcodes. And the one thing that I wanted to mention is that, SICK, they kind of have this campaign called More Than a Vision. So you can see the vision-based barcode is just one of 3 identification type of solutions that SICK offers. SICK offers a traditional laser barcode scanner, which is great for really high-speed conveyors doing a lot of packages per minute. The laser's not affected by ambient conditions. This is the traditional way of scanning 1D barcodes. Like we went through, they have a full range of vision-based barcode scanners that'll do all different type of barcodes for you, do multiple codes per scan. Any code orientation we can handle. And SICK also offers RFID, both in high frequency and ultra high frequency. So we have a full offering for auto ID solutions. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Deirdre to handle any questions and answers. Or questions, sorry.
Thanks, Eric. So yes, we'll open it up for a couple of questions. Please type any questions you have into the chat box or Q&A box, or you can email us at webinar@eandm.com. We did receive a couple of questions during the webinar, so we'll start with those questions first. The first one is, can I trigger the scanner to read using an external photoelectric sensor?
It's a great question. Yes, you can. You can actually have this. There is 2 discrete inputs that can be wired directly into the Lector. This can actually come directly from a photoelectric or an inductive or any type of proc sensor you might have.
Okay. And can I output the images that the scanner sees?
Absolutely, yeah. So the last thing we saw in the Sopus is the settings for the image archiving. You can have it set to output to your network storage somewhere, or it can be saved on the local network the local micro SD card that is capable within the scanner, or you can log them inside of Sopus as well if you're trying to do some troubleshooting.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so that concludes our Q&A portion of the webinar. Thank you, Eric, and everyone who attended today. If you would like to review any portion of the webinar, a recording will be available on our YouTube channel and on our website at EandM.com. Thank you again, and we hope to see you at our next SICK webinar on IO-Link on May 6th. Thank you so much, Eric.
Not a problem. Like Deirdre just said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and be happy to help.